Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience Travelers DraftKings picks and preview presented by Jägermeister. Give your beer an ice-cold shot this summer with an ice-cold shot of Jägermeister. Talking to Ben Rasa today. At first, we're going to go over a little bit of Millie Maker construction. Did the chalk win? Of course it did, but should you rely on that? Plus, we're going to break down the entire Travelers field and talk about lineup construction in a week where the bottom end, not so hot, all right? Let's get to it.
Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience Travelers Championship DraftKings picks and preview. Joining me to break this all down, another member of the Jon Rahm bandwagon at the U.S. Open. It is from fanvice.com, Ben Rasa. What's going on?
Not much, man. Just licking my wounds from last week. Took some lumps, not gonna lie. Jon Rahm, that wasn't the answer.
Yeah, well, before we get into the U.S. Open and how we constructed some of our lineups, very poorly, mind you, a great way to lose money was constructing them the way that I did, and probably the way that you did as well.
Yep.
I have some giveaways in here. I mentioned on yesterday's show, so you can enter that draw if you like for this one. Give the episode a like or rate, subscribe, and put 5 stars in on iTunes, Stitcher, all that fun stuff for the audio version. And in the comment section, leave your DK handle plus your favorite 2 plays under $7,500 this year. Again, that's 2. Because I mentioned that yesterday, that your favorite 2 guys over 40 to 1 or over 30 to 1 in the betting market yesterday. Then people were like, here's my one guy I like. 2 people. 2 people. That's all you need to do to get into the draw. There's a live chat tomorrow, Wednesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the DraftKings YouTube channel. Myself, Reed Fowler. Only going to be a hard hour this week because Reed Fowler, he's got places to go. So, you got to get your questions in bright and early. You can get in there. We'll schedule the event. You can jump into the chat early on, go leave your questions, and hey, I'll get to those ones first. More on, we got the giveaways. Oh, yeah, also, people need to know that this episode is brought to you by Jägermeister. If you didn't catch it right off the top, Jägermeister. That's what you got to be drinking this summer. And FantasyNational.com. The new time machine feature is kind of hilarious. And you can go back and check in the lead-in form for the entire field in terms of their strokes gain metrics from across the board for each of the previous 4 years. So 17, 16, 15, and 14 to see if those correlate. That's going to be available every single week to members of FantasyNational.com. A lot of big winners from FantasyNational.com. And one correction from yesterday. I corrected myself halfway through, but iGriff DFS, who won the $444 DraftKings contest at the U.S. Open, got in by playing his frequent player points, which is hilarious. Single bullet, took it down without actually investing a cent. I know you need to invest money to get that much, to get the frequent player points, but that is an amazing story to use that to get in, to have a single bullet, then go take it down and win like 80 grand. It's amazing.
Yeah, not bad.
Do you, I always forget about my frequent player points. Do you use those often? Or do you just buy hoodies with them?
No, I don't buy hoodies with them. I use them occasionally. I don't save up. Every week or two, I'll just throw it into a couple, whatever it can get me, and just take it off the top of my entry fees. But that is amazing. One bullet that you didn't even have to pay for.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about U.S. Open. Were you surprised? Actually, let me reframe this. Have we jumped the shark on ownership? Because this was Chalk City at the very top of the Millionaire Maker leaderboard.
It's one of those things, the results, you look back, yeah, obviously I wish I bought into some different chalk and whatnot, but not really. You don't want to be duped. Congratulations to those guys, but it's not great for your EV, obviously. There was a lot of chalk that hit. The chalk that I played did not hit. That was where you should have pivoted. One of my many, many mistakes. But yeah, I don't really regret, the mindset. It was more just sometimes you just have the wrong player pool. That was my problem. I didn't like Brooks. I really liked Rahm. I used Rory. I used Spieth, Grillo, Kuchar. Just a lot of big problems. And then the guys that I did get through went literally backwards on Saturday. Ricky and Benyon were not the solution.
Yeah, when I parse it through, Rahm was a big landmine for me. That blew up a ton of my lineups. I had a ton of Justin Thomas, who kind of lingered but didn't really do anything. But, I had DJ. I had, who was the other guy from the top? Yeah, I had Fleetwood, I had Casey, I had guys that were up there. I had a bunch of Grace. I had no Brooks, but I had no Day, I had no Spieth, I had no Tiger. Like, I had the right fades because I had to condense my player pool because it was the Millionaire Maker, and I played so few lineups as compared to like the $5 this week where you can enter 150 times. I might play a little bit more this week. I might play 50 lineups, and I can expand my player pool a little bit. But just no Brooks was the killer. No Brooks, no Stenson. I had enough rows, and then he ended up going backwards. But I think this might actually allow us to get a little bit of leverage at upcoming Millionaire Makers, because people, like you said, are going to look at the results of this and see, hey, the most popular guys, the most owned guys, the guys that everyone kind of talked up and said, oh, you can't play them, they're too chalky, they all hit. That means people are not going to swerve in the future, I think. And realistically, when you look back at it, I mean, having like 4 chalk-ish guys and then 2 pivot plays is usually the perfect recipe to winning the Millionaire Maker, and this time it just didn't. But I think I would take the historical trends over just one isolated U.S. Open.
For sure. I mean, it's one of those things. It's always a balance. You don't want 6, wild cards, and you don't want 6 chalky guys. That's a recipe for disaster. But that traditional, kind of balance of you have some chalk, you have a couple pivots, couple upside guys. Obviously, you need to get it all right to have a chance in something like that. I'll lean to that over kind of a 1-week sample size of what we saw last week.
And it's one of those things where when you're entering something like the Millionaire Maker, you're playing for first. I mean, that's the reason that you go into that contest, because it's so heavily weighted towards the first prize that you almost have to play the Ricky Bobby approach to your lineups. If you're not first, you're last.
Yeah, no, it is kind of like a winner take all with then additional prizes. You have to have that mindset, which makes it tough. It's a weird structure. It's very top heavy. But yeah, you don't want to be duped by people, and you just want to have kind of that unique out that if you hit the magic bullet, you'll get paid off.
Although I think I would be okay being duped if I ended up still coming in first.
Yeah, that's a good problem
I think
to
that would
have.
be fine. I'm gonna have Brandon on the show who split the Millionaire Maker Championship later on this week. So tune into that and get through his thought process and how he constructed his lineups. We'll talk about the chalk and the dupes, but we're here to talk about Travelers Championship. It's a 156-man field. We're in Hartford. It's one of the strongest fields, I think, ever at this tournament. Brooks is withdrawn from the Pro-Am, but not the tournament as of yet. I don't think that he is going to withdraw at this point. I think that would have come out already. So we're going to play it like everyone is still in the field. We're still Tuesday morning, so stuff can happen. But the pricing is tough this week, man. Like, there's bad players below $7,000.
Yeah, if you really go like extreme stars and scrubs, you're going to have a problem. I found it weird. I mean, I don't know. I'm not qualified to talk about Brooks anymore, but man, just seeing him where he is, to see Day at sub 10K, there were a couple that were kind of head scratchers for me.
All right, well, let's start with the above $10,000 range. And we got those 5 guys up there, Justin Thomas and Brooks being your number 1 and your number 2. They come in at 10.5 and 10.3. Then you got Rory, Spieth, and Reed, 10.9, 10.6, and then $10,000 even. It's tough to figure out for me what I really want to do up here. Because of the pricing, I think it's going to be very tough to fit a lot of guys in. I might go for a more balanced approach this week, just so the bottom end of my roster isn't just a complete disaster. I can fit in some very quality players if I start in the $9,000 range and work down. But I know I've said this a few times this year, but of these top 5 guys, I'm going with Jordan Spieth.
Yeah, here we go. I mean, I can't even say part X because I don't know how many times this has happened. I know this sounds ridiculous. I'm not in love with anybody really at the top. Brooks is out for me. I don't really care that I got him wrong last week in the sense that I'm not playing a guy off the U.S. Open win with the price bump. I can't believe he's even playing, to be honest. Then you have the other 4. I think JT makes sense at the top. That's fine. Spieth, Rory. I don't think a miscut last week, totally affects them. Maybe they get some extra. I don't know how that, in terms of how they'll react to something like that. And then Reed is, I think he sets up pretty well. So right now, I imagine myself actually not making a big stand. Maybe, getting slightly above or below the field with some of these guys. But I don't think this is the spot for me this week where I'm making, a big leverage play.
So you don't have one single favorite of the top guys. You're more taking a scattered approach to it?
It's definitely going to be scattered for me. It's still Rory. I think him and Spieth are the most interesting for me. Rory was fine here last year. He lost a boatload. I think this was the one where he had like 5 putters he was practicing with, but I could be wrong about that. But he did lose a lot of strokes on the greens. He should be able to hit a bunch of short irons, some wedges. So I like the price. I think that's fine. Ownership won't be. I think it'll be somewhat dispersed because these guys have issues. Obviously, Spieth has serious issues. His putter, I guess you could say, is coming around, but that's taking a pretty optimistic view.
Well, with Justin Thomas being so expensive, do you think that pushes down his ownership? Because when you look at him, no matter, and this was the case last week too with the U.S. Open, where statistically he's just the best player on the planet right now. Like every single week, he's uber consistent. He's going to get there tee to green. He has the good putter. He's come third here before. He has missed cuts here before. One of the things that I found using that time machine tool on Fantasy National, I went back and looked at the lead-in for players over the course of their past 50 rounds entering this event and looked at ball striking only. And inside the top 10, you're going to find the 30 players from the past 3 years. Only 3 of them missed the cut. 2 of them were winners. 2 of them were second place. 18 of them came inside the top 25. And you just look at Justin Thomas, and he's the ball striking master right now, and he crushes these par 70 courses. He always does. He scores so well on par 4s that I think that after Spieth, I'm gonna have to have some Justin Thomas, and then I don't know if I'm gonna touch anyone else from the top. And just I'm not gonna play 150 lineup. So again, I gotta whittle down my core just a little bit. And that's probably the way that I'm going to play it. I'm going to fade Brooks, fade Rory, maybe some Reed, but I doubt it. And then just a lot of Spieth, a lot of Justin Thomas, and then probably a lot of Paul Casey on the next tier.
Yeah, because there is, that little next tier. There's some reasonable plays if you want to go balanced. JT, the one thing, I haven't built just yet, I don't know how big the opportunity cost is going to be in terms of who you're going to have to take at the bottom. If you can fit it in comfortably, I think his ownership, it'll obviously be there regardless. But if it's a really tough build, you'll see the 11-5 tag kind of sway some people away. They'll say, forget it. I'll bump down and take the savings, maybe to get that last man in a little better.
Do you think that there is some sort of leverage to playing Brooks this week? Because I think a lot of people are just going to just straight out fade him because he's coming off the U.S. Open.
Yeah, in the sense that he's not going to be popular at all. But I have a thing. I don't like to play people off wins anyway, but this is a really tough spot, I feel like. And he got a big price bump. Now, you can say that's honestly better because that'll really reduce the ownership. And if you get Brooks right, obviously he's got the talent. He could easily win. It's not anything like that. It's just, it's hard to imagine him coming in even remotely focused. I'm not going there. If you wanted to take 10%, you probably get over the field.
All right, so if we're going to play 2 guys of the top 5 of the 10K plus range, I'm going Spieth and Justin Thomas. You're going?
Rory and Justin Thomas.
All right, 9K range. This is where things start to get a little bit interesting because my main man, Paul Casey, is just situated right there. Jason Day kicks this off, though, at $9,800. Then you got Paul Casey at 96, Bryson at 95, Leishman at 93, a former winner of this event. Then you got Webb Simpson and Ryan Moore, 91 and $9,000. I like a lot of these guys, but I especially like Paul Casey. He's my favorite guy from this spot. When you look at him, number 1 in ball striking. He's very, very, very good. It's more of a long-term play because he suffered that injury. So when you look at his past 24 rounds, he falls outside the top 10. When you look at the past 50 rounds, he's very much inside of it. So I like him. I like Ryan Moore a lot too, and I like Bryson. Like, those are the 3 guys, and I can talk myself into Leishman. I can talk myself into Webb Simpson. Very easy to talk yourself into Jason Day being sub $10,000, but I'm probably not going to have any of them.
Yeah, he's really tough right now because, I think a lot of people knew it was coming at some point. This is what happens when, he hadn't been great, really, tee to green. He was just making everything, and he isn't doing that anymore. And that's the result. Obviously, it's going to probably regress slightly back the other way. He's not going to be ice cold with the putter. Price is appealing. I'm kind of indifferent. Casey, for me, super reliable, consistent, churning it out. The win equity, not the best, obviously. But
Hey, he has a win this year.
Yeah, he broke through. It's not just the KLM Classic or whatever the hell it was like 10 years ago. So I have no problem with him. I'm always a Paul Casey fan. I guess I'm going to have to get used to seeing Bryson up here. He feels like he's overpriced, but he's good. He really is.
I know, and he's played especially well on Pete Dye courses. Of course, is the Pete Dye track. It's a par 70, and there's a lot of birdies to be made here, despite the fact that it's being a par 70. So you're going to have to score on par 4s. Just the track record, and I tweeted this out a little bit. I tweeted out last night. You can find the link in my column up on dkplaybook.com about Bryson and just his proclivity at some of these Pete Dye courses. Patrick Cantlay is another one. They just play really, really well. And the other two, and as you'll see, even as we record this show, I have some scheduled tweets ready to come out about some of these birdie fests. I correlated like 7 courses together that are par 70s and par 71s. Sedgefield, the old White TPC, TPC Deer Run, Waialae, Sea Island, this course. And when you look at them, Ryan Moore, Bryson, and Webb really stand out from that mix.
Yeah, this is a weird course because it yields a lot of birdies, but it's not overly easy. It's not overly difficult either, but it's not where guys are going to destroy it. So you're definitely going to need guys who can score. You'll get in trouble if you're in trouble. So I don't mind Ryan Moore either. He's the stats line up great, solid off the tee, great with the irons. Putting is what it is. If he gets a hot putter, definitely can contend. And then Webb, I don't know. I'm a little shaky with him. I don't know why, to be honest. His putting has been carrying him, and it's something, again, I think I just have to get used to that he's now a good putter. It's just hasn't been the case for so long. He's clearly found something at this point, but I'll lean Ryan Moore over him.
Yeah, I'm going to go Ryan Moore over him as well, especially because he made that, I know it's sort of a weird narrative and a bias that I'm having. Like, he played really deep into Sunday. Like, he was there until he wasn't anymore, almost like Matthew Fitzpatrick in a way, and then he got off the course. But, like, he had a good run at the U.S. Open. Like, the reason I like Casey a little bit more is he sort of had, like, a pressure-free final 2 days at the U.S. Open. Like, unless he went on the Fleetwood-type run, he just wasn't going to be in it, and then he wasn't in it. But he still came T16. Nice for his first start coming off the hip injury.
Yeah, no, I mean, Casey did his thing. That's what he does. He's reliable. He's safe. He really wasn't, truth be told, in contention at all. He just kind of backdoored a T20, which is no problem for him. And the price is fine. I definitely see him in cash. There are a lot of guys up here to choose from, but yeah, Webb, I don't know. It's just something about it. It's also, like you said, if you're I'll probably make 50, 60 lineups this week. You can't have everybody. I'm not making a big stand up top, and this is another range, not super stand. So Webb's a guy that I end up probably underweight on.
What about Leishman? Because he just kind of fell by the wayside here. Former winner of this event, has been playing a little bit better recently. He had the second at Byron Nelson. He performed pretty well at Shinnecock Hills. He's just someone that he seems to get Pete Dye courses pretty well. And if it ends up getting windy, which it probably won't, he's always someone that you do like in the wind.
Yeah, obviously he can certainly ground it out when the conditions get tough. For me, I kind of have him in the same bucket as Webb. Good with the irons, certainly can play. The course, I think, is a decent fit, but I would rather find the 200 and go get Bryson, or take a small savings with someone like Ryan Moore, who I don't think will be overly popular, and I like just as much, if not more.
Yeah, Ryan Moore is a really interesting situation, only because he's surrounded. Like, I think objectively people will like him, but then they'll see the price, and then they'll see the names that are all around and be like, well, I can have this guy who's better than Ryan Moore, potentially. Like, even when we go down, you got like Cantlay, and you got Bubba Watson, and even Charlie Hoffman's going to carry some ownership here as well, that I think people's eyes will just go to those names more than they'll go to Ryan Moore. Yeah,
agreed. I do think he kind of gets lost to an extent, and there's just so many viable options up here. They're going to see Berger with a good showing last week. Bubba, obviously, great success at this course. And then, Hoffman, Xander, always is sneaky popular. So a lot of options in the same range.
Yeah, and then you got Billy Horschel down at 8,500, and it's like Cantlay, Harmon, who's performed really well at this course in the past, Zach Johnson, who tends to tear up Pete Dye courses, Snedeker, who's won the Wyndham, which was another corollary course that I found in here, and it seems like he's starting to come around just a little bit. Then you got Knox, a former winner, and JB Holmes, who I actually really like this week, and we'll get into that in a second. But from the very top, probably not going to go with any Berger. I know he lost in the playoff here last year, has a very good track record, but I think that where everyone saw him last week at the U.S. Open perform really well, and a lot of it was extremely putting based, that I just think that he's going to be over-owned, and I'd rather own Bubba.
Ooh, Bubba. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really on Burger either, to be honest, but I don't know if I want to roll those shares to Bubba per se. I'm having a tough time. We were talking a little before the show, and I was saying I was on Bubba all last year. He was awful. He had the stupid ball. Then I liked him really, really good at Riviera, and then I got off him because of that stupid celebrity basketball tournament, and that created a big sting. I haven't been playing him much. I guess it sets up well. I mean, it obviously likes this course. I don't know. I don't have a feel for how popular do you think he's going to be?
I don't know. I find it hard. Like Bubba every single week, he's such a divisive player that I'm always just under the impression when you get to a Bubba track, play Bubba. And then deal with the consequences after the fact. But like, this is a wedge fest. This tournament is a wedge fest. Can you hit a wedge to 10 feet? Can you make some putts? The year that he won in 2016, I want to say it is, he was perfect inside 10 feet for the week. I doubt that happens again. And had he not have done that, Paul Casey would have won. But there's something about this course that he just gets. And like, I have no way to really quantify it, what makes him so good at these courses. But, he's won at a Pete Dye course already this year in terms of Austin Country Club. He's won at the Zurich in the past. He's won here before. There's something about Pete Dye courses, except for the players, apparently, that he can really wrap his mind around. Maybe it's the shot shapes that you need to see, some of the blind shots, and the fact that he can hit it to 100 yards out every time and just pitch it in.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain players that kind of, that Bubba, what he doesn't like, what he likes. There's not that much variation. The courses that he hates, he tends to play really bad at, and these courses that he loves, he continuously tears up. So, yeah, obviously, I see it. The guy who kind of interests me a little more, I never get him right, but is Xander. The off the tee, it had been shaky. Obviously, he had a really good showing last week. I think this course sets up pretty well for him. He was solid here last year. He did putt well. The approaches weren't great. But I could see his tee to green game kind of responding well here. I don't think the ownership will be outrageous. And if it looks like Bubba is going to be, really popular, I don't mind allocating some of those shares to Xander.
See, I would think the guy who's going to soak up most of the ownership in the mid $8,000 range is going to be Cantlay. Jeff and I talked about him on Monday's show. We both bet him at 40-1. Checking in on the odds this morning, he's down to 30-1. Generally, that's a pretty good sign that a guy's going to be popular once the odds start swinging up one way. So I really do like him here. He has a very piss-poor track record, although someone did tell me that he shot almost like a 59 as a junior or something, but in 3 professional starts, he's missed 2 cuts. Hasn't played it in like 4 years. But this seems like a track where he would do well. Just hit some fairways, hit some greens in regulation, and hopefully he can putt. That's been the sneaky thing about Cantlay all year, is that he can't putt.
Yeah, he's not been good. He's had a couple really bad showings with the flat stick. So I'm with you. I mean, I think it sets up well. Even his scrambling, which I've ripped on many times, it's not as bad as I've made it out to be. He is getting better. So it's not a death sentence, if he does have to scramble here and there. And this should be fine for him. Yeah, keep it in the fairway, club down, pepper the greens. And then he is going to have to make – that's the thing about this course. You kind of just alluded to it. You're going to have a lot of those, decent 10 to 15-foot birdie putts. You're going to have to convert some. You're going to have to get hot with the putter. So if he can't do that, obviously it's going to be rough. But – it's pretty fluky putting. We talk about that all the time. I'm willing to buy in. I think he's a very good cash play. Just a good play overall.
Zach Johnson's the other one at 8,200 that I do really like here. Anytime that you can get him at a shorter course. He's playing surprisingly well tee to green right now. And listen, before he got really mad at the U.S. Open, he was playing quite well there. Too. So he has a good track record at these courses, at Pete Dye courses in general. And anytime that you can get him at a par 70 over a par 72, that usually works in his favor.
Oh boy, I don't know about that guy. I'm not a Zach Johnson guy. I don't play him often.
How are you not a Zach Johnson guy, but you're a Bill Haas guy?
I know. I have obviously a lot of issues. I just prefer Snedeker right there if I'm going to take one of those type dudes. Zach Johnson, I mean, yeah, he had a good showing last week. He had been bad though. And he's been popular. A lot of people use him in cash all the time. He was awful. Fort Worth Memorial was blah. His putting has been kind of cold. So yeah, I get it. The John Deere kind of course setup and whatnot. It's fine. I just think for me, Snedeker, always a guy kind of like he's playing a little better. And then you talked about it. I went to target JB Holmes last week. Obviously, I realized he wasn't in the tournament, but he's sneakily playing pretty well.
Yeah, I was surprised when I started digging into it. He's erratic in one facet of his game every single time out. So like the weeks that he's got it going, ball striking, can't putt. I mean, generally he can't putt, but like even there's some weeks where like for some reason he can't hit. It's like he's never picked up a wedge before in his life. Then he's putting the lights out. But I like these sort of shorter courses. He can take aim with those wedges. He usually is very good with his wedges, and he's scoring on par fours. Like I just think that he's wildly undervalued here.
Yeah, this is going to end probably really poorly for both of us because I really like him, and he's shown he is obviously an awful putter. But what's really appealing is he's had a couple instances where he can get mega hot even with the putter. Obviously, he gets crazy hot off the tee with the approach, his short game, but he's had a couple monster putting rounds. And when you're taking a guy like that, you're just hoping you get one of those. And yeah, the form is good. He was really incredible. St. Jude, tee to green. And yeah, like I said, I thought he set up pretty well last week. He didn't even make the tournament. So this is a guy, flat 8K. I don't think he'll be overly popular. One of my favorite plays of the week, and I'm stunned to say that.
Yeah, it's funny that I'm getting in there at the $8,000 range before we get into like the sub 8K, as the top of that range will be known as the Mayo zone, and I don't know what to do. But like Russell Knox is there. I do like Russell Knox. I have to dig in more to these two. I'm gonna play JB. I'll probably end up playing a little bit of Knox as well. But then when we get to like the rest of the guys, like I need to kind of pick and choose of who I want to go with. Again, you can't just take everyone in this range and just go with it. But I think this is why I'll end up playing a more balanced approach to squeeze like 4 or 5 of these guys into different lineups with one of the 9K guys. But quickly before we get out of here, on the 8K, Hoffman, Horschel, Harmon, 3 guys we didn't bring up. Any interest in either of them? Because those feel like the pivot plays in this range.
Yeah, no interest for Billy Ho. He's out for me. Hoffman, I see it. He was good here last year. God, I don't love the price, and he's just around a lot of players. If it was a straight pivot off one guy, I would say, okay, there's a real chance, but you got Bubba, you got Xander, Ryan Moore again in that same range. Even Berger, who's not someone I'm particularly on, but I don't hate it. So I don't think I'm going to have a ton of room there. So by default, I think if I do end up on one of those, it'll be a Harmon pivot off Cantlay because I'm not really big on Zach Johnson. So I'll probably have some room there.
Okay, so let's talk Mayo zone. Sub 8K. Okay. We go Luke List, that awful Keegan Bradley, Patrick Rogers, Jamie Lovemark, Emiliano Grillo, Kyle Stanley, Brendan Steele, Russell Henley, Austin Cook, CT Pan, and Adam Hadwin. Well,
you're playing all of them, I assume.
How did all my guys get into the same tournament? Now they're all priced exact. I feel like the DraftKings is trolling me.
Yeah, man. I just play Jamie Lovemark. Just pivot off all of them.
It's funny, like when I rated everything out and looked at like some of the key stats that I want to find, and I really weighted it towards ball striking. Most importantly, if anything, a slight little lean towards approach over off the tee. But just I think that one stat in general is really what you want to look at. Then par 4s, then par 5s, then birdies are better. And Jamie Lovemark's just like near the top of every list.
Yeah, Jamie Lovemark is quietly playing really good tee to green. Form is there. Ownership's not going to be there because you just mentioned there is a bunch of guilty pleasures for everyone in this range. That's a guy I am interested in. I will, even though Keegan, I went down with the Keegan chip, not to the extent that you did last week.
Yeah, but you got your money back on the Keegan chip.
I appreciate that. Yeah, man. I like Keegan this week. I guess you could call this a home-esque game. It's as close as he's going to get. So tee to green, it should suit his eye. The miscut, obviously, I mean, he was awful.
He was not good.
Not really, really bad. But that tournament is so unique. I kind of throw those out. Same with Grillo. I'm not worried about that. They should be fine. They'll be back. I trust them. And then your boy Luke Lisk. This is the formula. We've seen it. Valspar at a bunch of places. Club down. Don't spray. Be good. His around the green is miles better than it was. No problem with him, but I think Lovemark is the guy that I'm very interested in relation to the field for sure. That's a guy I'm definitely going overweight on.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are just going to be off Keegan because of last week. I'll jump back on and I'll be overweight on him because I don't think he's going to garner much ownership. I'm going to be on Luke List. It's just like when we get down and see Woo is down there. I'm going to be on See Woo too because this is what I do. Hey, listen, if it wasn't for those two guys being in my lineup, I wouldn't have hilarious money to check around on DraftKings. So they're my guys. I got to stick with them. And I really do think I got to bet Luke List at every tournament until like the end of the year and see what happens. Because it really does feel like he's going to win at some point. He's following another guy who's in this range of what he did last year. He's following the Kyle Stanley formula from last year. Because Kyle Stanley had the hot run, everyone got on him, and then it didn't happen. Then everyone got off him, and boom, Kyle Stanley wins. He actually won the tournament that is coming up next week, so maybe that's Luke List's spot too. But he's not playing poor enough just to get off him. Yeah, he missed the cut at the U.S. Open. So what?
Yeah, that's not that. Like I said, I think you're 100% right in the sense that people will overreact to the miscut and without taking the context of it's just not real. I'm not saying it's not indicative of anything, but it's not that big of a deal. It's just a ridiculous tournament. It's obviously super hard. This is not that. And yeah, for life hedge purposes, I would recommend just because if List wins and you don't have them, that would be that'd be a killer for you. So keep betting them.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to keep betting him. I'm going to play him this week on DK too. So for me, I'm going to go with List, Keegan. I'll fade Patrick Rogers because I think that he might garner some ownership here. Just because of you kept seeing his name on the leaderboard at the U.S. Open, and people are frustrated with Keegan, people are frustrated with List, they're frustrated with Kyle Stanley and Griot that it might just go there. I'll take Lovemark with you. I'll get back on Griot as well. I like Brendan Steele. I'll probably have to sacrifice some shares and have none of Kyle Stanley. Henley might garner some attention here. I'll probably just straight fade him, and I'll probably straight fade CT Pan, who people are really big on. I get why people are big on him. He's really trending. I hate the term trending in the right direction, but that's what he's doing. Just consecutive performances, getting better and better and better each week. He had a top 10 at this site last year, hitting a ton in greens and regulation. I completely understand it, but I think there's going to be a lot of ownership that follows him.
Yeah, CT Pan is every week there's a candidate for the guy that everybody thinks is like, I'll give you a sneaky off-the-wall guy, and it's him, and then he's like 15%. I think for me, Austin Cook is going to be kind of the off-the-wall guy. Maybe.
See, I think that he is the logical pivot off of Austin Cook here, but I think, or off of CT Pan, sorry.
Okay. Yeah,
but I think that CT Pan might be higher owned than Griot is.
Yeah, that's absurd.
Yeah,
that's
then there's no reason to own CT Pan.
Not really. I'm a huge I like CT Pan.
I like him too.
I know. He's trend, like you said. Everything you just said is 100% right. And if he plays well, I'll live with it because I'm not taking chalk CT Pan. That's just not going to happen. Especially because you have a range with some real players in it. Whether you look at Steele, Henley, like I said, I kind of like Austin Cook. Obviously, Griot is a super real player. He's going to be in my cash lineup. One miscut, I'm not worried about that. He had a super clutch Sunday for me. I shouldn't be factoring that in, but last year here. And yeah, so there's just too many guys that if there's a concentrated ownership with someone like CT Pan, I will be swerving off that.
So from the $7,500 and below, is it time to let Adam Hadwin get himself right? Because there's something wrong with him. I mean, he pulled out of the Heritage with that mysterious injury, and then he just has not been right since.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get rewarded to the fullest extent with that because I had been fading him and he was just miraculously making cuts. And then he was awful. He wasn't doing anything for people. But I should have got paid off a little more, especially in cash. Now I think, this miscut is more indicative of something than some of these other guys because he is trending downward. I'd say ownership probably still going to be there to some extent. So I don't have a bunch of interest. But man, the talent kind of, the ranges we have just been talking about, there was a lot of guys. Now it starts to thin out for me. Chesson Hadley, I think I'm pretty interested in. I'm a sucker for Lahiri.
Yeah, what? Hey, because Feinberg and I talked about this in terms of betting Hadley yesterday too. He's 100-1, and now he's like 7,300 on DraftKings. Wasn't it like 2 weeks ago he was like 9,000?
Yeah, he's one of those guys that his price is just out of he's 11,000. I feel like some weeks 6,000. He's all over the map. and he's he's a good player. Again, a little overmatched last week. He's not a good scrambler at all. He needs to lean on the irons, and he can do that here. He can get back to why he's successful. Before that, he had run off a really good stretch with a bunch of top 20s, never really competing. But at this price, you don't need him to do that. You just need him to be solid, make the cut, and return value.
So the other guys here, I talked about C. Woo! I mean, if we're at a Pete Dye course, I'm playing Siwoo. Hey, you probably don't need too much of him. And again, always betting Siwoo, better than playing him on DraftKings, but he's $7,500. I'm going to have to be in. The short game has come around. The putting has not, but the off-the-tee stuff is good. But even digging in a little bit deeper to him, the approach has not been very good. But at the courses where he's won, Wyndham and the Players, both corollary courses potentially to here, shorter tracks where he can just hit wedges a lot of the time. And anytime that he can hit wedges, he tends to play really well.
Yeah, I mean, for as much as you play Siwoo Kim, I never play that guy, to be honest. Yeah, you're the Siwoo Kim wrestler. I just default to you. If you like him, fire him up. I would probably pivot to someone like, for a dart throw, you have Bo Hostler there. I'll take a look at Johnny Vegas, Lahiri. These aren't names I'm super interested in, but I think they're just as viable as Siwoo. Danny Lee is there too. I could see him getting sneakily owned. I don't have a bunch of interest there. I know he had the good finish here last year, but he's just been, pretty bad for a while now.
I think that I might actually end up with a few shares of Streelman. He's won this event before, and he's going to be good ball striking as long as he doesn't lose 8 strokes putting. And you kind of hit it too, like with Hadley, where this is a more comfort zone where you hit some fairways. Everyone hits the fairway here. It's like 67% driving accuracy rate for the field. Streelman will probably be above that because he hits a lot of fairways just in general. We haven't seen him really pop since Heritage and Valero, where he was 7th and 8th. But he has made 2 cuts in a row. He's gained strokes with approaches in each of his past 5 tournaments. He was 44th at Memorial and gained 5 strokes through approach. He just couldn't get up and down. But this doesn't seem like a spot where he's going to have to rely on getting up and down all that much. Now, if he doesn't, he's cooked. But that's something you can't really factor in too much. I'd rather take the ball striking over the approach. So I can see him being under-owned. I do like him.
Yeah, he's a guy, man. He was on fire earlier this year. I was using him week after week. Now he's kind of just lost. Yeah, I said this a lot. With guys, the top guys are different, but with guys like this, I would rather a guy who does one thing really good than some of these golfers who are just kind of at all 4 categories. And Streelman's the kind of guy, like you said, if he's scrambling a bunch, you're probably dead. But you got to live with that because there's a chance that he just goes nuclear tee to green with the irons. And that's, mitigated fully, and he can just lean on the approach. And if you get that, you're getting a gigantic steal at this price.
So, Siwoo, Streelman, Hadley, Garrigus, and Spawn are right there, but I'm probably going to bypass them. We'll see. Killa Keith is at $7,200. I love me some Keith Mitchell. The guy scores on par 4s. But then you got Kadira. We're back at a Pete Dye course. Maybe he's back in play. Your boy Bill Haas is down here.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Stu Sink. Pat Perez is $7,000.
I think Pat Perez might have got a price drop from the U.S. What?
He made the cut at the U.S. Open too.
Yeah, he was fine. I mean, I obviously didn't use him, but I have no problem with that's almost where it's just I price dependent. I wasn't interested in Pat Perez much, but if he's my last man in, so be it. He's just a better golfer than most of this range. Spawn's a guy he's another one, not to the same as List, but I feel like a lot of people it was coming, he was about to, and then now he's back, couple missed cuts. No one's really on him. He's eventually going to get it together and start getting more consistent. I don't know if it's this spot. Obviously, I'll play Bill Haas over these guys. What about, I'm just going to throw one name, Joel Dahman, who was chalk a couple weeks ago, miscut. Do you have any interest with that guy? He's pretty damn good with the irons.
Yeah, I was looking at him. There's a few guys in this range that kind of stack up the same way. Like Tyler Duncan's another one that kind of fits the Joel Dahman prototype. Keith Mitchell is one of those guys as well. I mean, I don't know what to do with him. Werenski was lights out with the irons too, and then it's really hard to kind of recalibrate coming off the U.S. Open of what's real, what's not. Now that we're back in an easier course, is this better for those guys? But I probably won't play Dahmen. I think I'd probably be more inclined to play someone like Bill Haas this week.
That's right. Oh, well, that's definitely the answer. Bill Haas, sneaky trending upwards, but there's a lot of guys in that same bucket for me. I see something with Dahmen, Keith Mitchell. Not a super fan, but I see it. Rory Sabatini is somehow playing good golf consistently.
Sabatini is someone that I am going to play. I think you could probably play Sabatini in cash.
It's sadly, I think that is viable. I don't know what's happened in this world where he's just good. Like, he's just playing really solid golf consistently. He has made a very large string of cuts in a row, and he's not contended, but he's thrown up a couple top 20s and whatnot. And then there's, the man who was opposed to Keegan last week. You got Ollie right there. Not really. It hasn't been good for a while now. I still do get kind of sucked in. I think it's just the name. I think he's a better player than most people probably do, but it's pretty murky down here. I don't see a lot of guys that I'm comfortable really concentrating my ownership with. There's just not a lot of safety in this range.
Well, the thing is, I kind of need to pepper the bottom of the $7,000 range. I don't want to veer into the sixes all that much if I want to keep the balance in order. Like, I feel like I'm better off with a Streelman or a Hadley instead of going down to like a Lovelady and Scott Stallings. Although Matt Jones has been continuously playing well. He's down in the $6,000 range. But I just feel better with like Sabatini being my cheapest player kind of thing rather than having to dip down. I mean, with Justin Thomas, I probably will have to do that if I'm going to use him. But on the whole, the concentrated part of my core, not that I want to go superly overweight on some of these guys, but I will have a few. The last two I wanted to talk about from this range. One is Troy Merritt, who's made 7 consecutive cuts and just keeps being lights out with his irons and scoring on par 4s. I thought he was interesting. And Jim Furyk, man, played well, and he did shoot a 58 here like 2 years ago.
Yeah, that was obviously absurd. Troy Merritt, I really don't, that's a guy I obviously don't know much about. I've seen the stats, he's playing well. 12th at St. Jude. I still think for me, there's a couple guys that I'll just take kind of long-term form over rather than going to him. But Furyk, I mean, do you worry, even though, he's playing better, just the lack of upside? I know, talking about a guy who just shot 58 and then I say lack of upside, but I just don't know how high that ceiling is. Can he make the cut? Of course. But I don't know if I really see him contending on a course where you're going to have to score a bit. This isn't going to be where you're really grinding it out. You're going to need birdies here.
Yeah, I mean, he's played well at Heritage over the years, which I think can match up with this. Clearly, he has an affinity for this course. Anytime that you just take the par 5s, not out of play, because I do think that scoring on par 5s is going to be important. Those are easy birdies. Plus, there's a drivable par 4 coming home that, he's probably not going to be able to get to. I mean, he can get there in one, but he probably won't try to get there in one. He'll just lay up, chip it on, hope to make some birdies. But the irons have been there. 4 consecutive tournaments, including the U.S. Open, where he's hitting his irons really well, and if he continues to do that, he's going to have a lot of success this week.
Jim Furyk. Oh, man. I don't know if I've rostered him this year, to be honst.
I rostered him at Heritage, and he ended up making the cut and coming like 70th.
That's what I worry about. Like something like that. He's still pretty, I don't want to say reliable, but he's got that kind of game, the Stricker-esque, where he's just solid. He does his thing. The par 5s, he hits it to 120, and then he sticks it to 8 feet, and then he makes it. I'm just not sure how big of the upside there is. The streaks, the bonuses, that's all going to be back this week. Last week, we didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But I think I probably lean to some of these, web.com-esque dudes who can just get crazy hot. I mean, we've seen that with guys like Keith Mitchell and people like that. They can't sustain it, but they do score pretty well.
Any TPJ love? Ted Potter was heating up and even had like a hot front 9 at the U.S. Open too.
Yeah, I know. I saw him making like birdies and I was disturbed. No, not really. I think for me, Pat Perez, I want to say there's a couple guys, I look and I guess it's just the names that get me. You have McGirt there. James Hahn is in the 6s. These were guys that I consider them better players than where they're priced. The form is obviously what's dragging them down, but I think if I do have to drop into this range, those are the kind of guys I'm gonna look to. I want to say Streb, but I can't. It's ugly down here. You're right. I'm gonna try to avoid the sixes as much as possible.
I do have some names in the sixes. One is Johnny.
Yeah, I was just about to say him, your boy.
Hey, listen, guy makes cuts and is a pretty decent Pete Dye player. $6,900. Andrew Landry is $6,800. He hasn't done much since his win, but I think that he's a pretty good player. We liked him for a while. Why don't we like him anymore? And then we have Tom Hoagie, who plays well on Dye courses, $6,700. Just the guy can't seem to sustain it when he gets to the weekend. A little Jim Furyk and Steve Stricker-esque that he just kind of fades. And the last guy is a guy who turned pro last week and had a real good showing at the U.S. Open. Dylan Meyer.
Yeah, he's someone.
I'm going to play Dylan Meyer.
Yeah, he's a good. I mean, I think he's a Fighting Illini guy, but he looked good last week. Pedigree seems to be there. I don't mind that. This field, it's strong at the top, but it's not overly strong top to bottom in the sense that he can certainly play. And we've just seen time and time again, I think guys just generally, not everyone, but there are people who are more ready to really kind of hit the ground running, make some cuts. So I don't mind that. Any love for Seamus, my man?
Seamus is just so putting dependent that if it ever swings the other way, like here's past 5 tournaments, and he's made a bunch of cuts, although he missed at Byron, he missed at Valero, St. Jude, 12th, 27th at Wells Fargo, 5th at Coriolis. But like 3.6, 3.5, 2.8, 3.12. There's past 5 events on the green. Like, what happens when he only gains a stroke on the green? He's going to miss the cut. Hell, he missed the cut by gaining 3.5 strokes putting 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that could be a problem. The one thing I will say about him that I do like is when you're getting him through, you're getting paid off in the sense that he's not coming, 58th, 60th, where he can break through, he can compete and get you some placement points. Now, the bigger issue is what you just talked about. He's not even crushing it, and he's crushing it on the greens. When that regresses, then what? You're going to have a serious problem on your hands. But he is a guy that I could see myself maybe taking a couple flyers on because he is riding a hot putter, and he does have some upside.
I think I'd rather go with a guy who's missed 4 cuts in a row, although he had a very nice showing on the web.com tour in that period, is Lanto. At least I know Lanto's going to make birdies. He's going to make a ton of bogeys, but if this becomes a birdie fest, I want the guy who's just like sticking it all the time.
I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. I really don't know who that is. That guy, I see him occasionally. They'll just be like, "Oh, yeah, Lanto Griffin's second straight."
Yeah, do you know why you see Lanto? Because he pops up on like PGA birdies, like, who the hell is Lanto Griffin, and why has he made 4 consecutive birdies? Because that's what he does.
Yeah.
He was even doing it last week at the U.S. Open. He almost made the cut by going like birdie, birdie, birdie.
Yeah, no. If there was a bonus, if DraftKings had some type of bonus where it was like 6 in a row, that guy would be like one of the best players because he makes crazy streaks. I don't know if I can actually. He would be definitely a new one for me. So maybe, but I think you talked about Andrew Landry. Those Matt Jones. Those just a kind of a tier above someone like Lanto. I think if I have to go in this range, I'll be going to those guys.
What has McGirt even been up to recently?
Not anything useful. I've used him more often than I probably should. And he shows like little flashes. He finally was decent. St. Jude, he wasn't terrible. Good with the irons, but he had just been bleeding strokes off the tee and not really doing anything else too good before that. I'm still kind of buying him, though. I think he's a better player than the price, and I don't want to say he's returning to a form, but we have seen some light after it was really murky kind of in that Texas swing players area.
What about Wes Bryan? 3 cuts in a row, and now we're at a Pete Dye course. He's lit it up at John Deere in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I do my Fan Vice podcast with Tim Frank, so it's hard for me to rep Wes Bryan without taking the heat later. Obviously, as much as people like to rip on him, he has a formula, and this is where he can use it in the sense that this is a short course. He's not going to be behind. The thing with him is even when he clubs down,
he still misses the fairway.
That's what I'm saying. It's insane. Like you would think, oh, well, this is, of course, obviously take driver out of the bag, he'll club down, hit a bunch of fairways. That's not happening. He is just straight. I mean, his off the tee numbers are so bad. It's incredible that he's had some decent showings. I mean, he has to lean on his irons so heavily, and his putting and short game is always really good. It's tough. He's the only player that I really know of. You kind of talk about his off the tee kind of like a putter, in the sense that if you can just get him to be average off the tee, you're going to be in pretty good shape, because the rest of his game is really solid, but it's tough when you're in the rough perpetually.
Yeah, 8th at John Deere 2 years ago, 3rd at John Deere last year. I think I'm going to use him over like John Huh, over Tyler Duncan. I'll have some shares. I'll have some shares of Wes Bryant.
Ooh, Wes Bryant shares. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to look. When you look at this guy's stats, you just see really, really bad off the tee, to the point where it's like, I don't know if anybody can overcome that.
Well, he did lose an impressive 4.6 strokes off the tee at this tournament last year.
Like, that's not even atypical for him, though.
No, it's really not. That was nowhere near his worst of the year.
Like, that's so bad. It's, man.
He has one of the most impressive numbers I've ever seen in terms of negative. I've never seen a negative this big, and you can credit Dustin Johnson for this. But at Tournament of Champions this year, he lost 11.3 strokes off the tee.
Yeah, like, I genuinely don't know how that's possible.
Well, it's possible because Dustin Johnson, on like every par 4, hit it to like 2 feet off the tee. That's just weighted against like the strokes gained average. His got weighed down even more.
Yeah, was that where he almost made the hole in one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. That really is one for the books. That's not going to be broken for a long time. It's not that I'm throwing out more flyers, but for your Wesley Bryan, the guy who I've been waiting on, and I don't know if it's ever going to come, is Kelly Craft. I play him a couple flyer shares like every week. It's just not really materializing. The irons haven't been there, but I keep thinking that this guy is going to be sneaky. He always is in terms of ownership, but it's not really firing. I don't think you're not a Kelly Craft guy, are you?
He actually did some nice work for me in Dominican Republic earlier this year, cranking out a T5, which was really nice from a betting perspective. But I was at like Zurich like 2 years ago. Like he was getting hot. Like it feels like when he starts hitting his irons well and the ball striking comes, it lasts for like 3 weeks. And that's all you get with Kelly Craft.
Yeah, I don't even know. I'm waiting for those 3 weeks. They're just not. There's no weeks right now. He's just. It's just been bad. I thought at Memorial
he had it earlier this year. He had it in March. He was 8th at Honda, 31st at Valspar, 3rd in Dominican Republic, and he's been garbage since.
Yeah, I think that's where I jumped on. Not smart. And then he hit one of those missed cuts. He hit a bird and it went in the water. That's neither here nor there. But yeah, I think this is kind of what you're dealing with, though, just to bring it full circle. It's tough. This is why Justin Thomas, if you take someone else with him up top, you're going to be at a disadvantage, in the sense that you're going to have to rely on some of these type of golfers, and it's slim pickings down here.
So it seems like maybe starting in the $9,000 range and building a more concentrated, balanced lineup would be the way to go. I mean, it might not be, but I think that's how I'm going to construct the majority of my lineups.
I can say this. I know for a fact I will have plenty of lineups with like Hadley, someone like that. It's my last man in. And to do that, you're probably going to have to sacrifice the very top, or single them and then really pepper kind of that 7K range.
Well, I think this has been, what was the final leaderboard at the Players? I think we see this with Pete Dye courses a lot, where like I remember at Heritage, the reason that I ended up doing so well that week was obviously I had Kadira in a lineup, and that really paid off, but it's not like the rest of my team was garbage. I had it was the highest 6-6 percentage I had all season long, that and Byron Nelson and Honda. No, Honda I had a ton of good 5-6s because of Luke List. But I faded all 4 guys above $10,000, and 3 of them missed the cut, and DJ didn't do all that much. At the Players, like, I think if you had faded all the really high-end guys, you would have ended up doing pretty well. Maybe there's something to Pete Dye courses and just not taking the top end. And maybe Pete Dye neutralizes the field a little bit.
I think there's something to be said that obviously the Players is somewhat of an extreme just because there's so much water, and that does neutralize it because the cut risk is immense. But yeah, I do think there's something to that. These guys at this course, we've seen some big names get cut. I'm sure we'll see that again this week, especially with the way they're playing too. It's not like these guys are coming and firing. I said I like Rory. I like Rory, and I'm worried about Rory getting through the cut. And I think that's the same way with Spieth. I see the narrative to playing him, but obviously he's a cut risk right now. He's just playing really bad golf. So yeah, you're not sacrificing that much. Now you could easily get burned by doing that, of course, but you have to do something. You can't just rake yourself. So I don't mind doing that at a course where it will be somewhat neutralized.
All right, that'll do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. Travelers Championship, DraftKings picks and preview. You can find my full cheat sheet later Tuesday afternoon up on DKPlaybook.com. Plus the live chat, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time for 1 hour only. So get your questions in early on the DraftKings YouTube page. Raza, when are you guys doing the Fan Vice podcast with Andrew Barron and Tim Frank?
Yeah, you can check us out later today, 2:30, and then it'll be available. And then we do Behind the Paywall Wednesday night show where we kind of talk about lineup construction, ownership, how we're actually breaking down our team. So a lot of fun. Sign on up if you haven't checked us out.
You got any weather concerns this week? I didn't even look yet. I assume no?
I don't think so. This isn't a notoriously weather-driven event, right?
No, it rarely crops itself up. Maybe some rain, but not extreme
I'm
winds.
sick of the weather.
You know what? There is something I wanted to say, and I didn't get it out on yesterday's show or this show. After day one, people were like, driving distance? Nah. Can't, you gotta take everyone who's accurate. Weather draw doesn't mean anything. As it turned out, the AM-PM stack turned out to be like almost 2 strokes better. And when you look at that final leaderboard at the US Open, sure, there are outliers, but what won out? Driving distance.
It's true. Just not Rahm's driving distance.
No, he had too much. Him and Trey Mullinax had too much driving distance. But when you got dudes like Burmeister and Ryan Fox making the cut, maybe driving distance.
Burmeister's 18th hole, that was out of, I don't know what that was, but yeah, that's extreme driving distance. Ryan Fox's of the world.
Listen, you had to hit fairways. That was a part of it too. And we said that going in, that you couldn't just take pure bombers and just spray it everywhere, which ended up happening to a lot of them. But the guys that were going to win were the guys that hit it long and the guys who hit it straight. There's a reason that Tony Finau's up there, and Berger, and Xander Schauffele, and guys like Stenson couldn't just continue to keep it going. And the only reason that Stenson ended up so high in that tournament is because on the front 9 on Saturday, he made every 20-foot putt.
He was, I had no hope almost at that point, but I did want Stenson to do bad, and he was saving himself. It was absurd. He, like you just said, he was making putt after putt. It really marred actually pretty shitty tee to green.
All right. I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. The betting cheat sheet will be up Wednesday afternoon on my Facebook page, so go follow that and you'll get the quick notification when that pops up. You can even set that. Go do it. The giveaways below $7,500 this week. DK handle, your 2 favorite plays. Hit the comments, give us a like, and rate, subscribe, review on iTunes, Stitcher, Podomatic, and all that fun stuff. Even if you don't ever listen to podcasts, please just sign up to the Pat Mayo Experience and download it. You don't even need to listen to it that way. You can just watch it on YouTube or DK Live or wherever. Still works out pretty well for me. Oh, and become a member of Fantasy National. Look, we got the British Open coming up here, and there's a bunch of new tools really geared towards helping you set your lineups really well and getting acclimated to using those tools right now, especially the mixed condition model, which has been a huge success so far for members. Would be pretty valuable to do right now to get you geared up to potentially win $1 million. And hey, maybe you'll win some DK bucks as well and you'll get a free entry into the tournament, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. We are brought to you by Jägermeister. So, go drink Jägermeister, okay? I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck at the Travelers Championship. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!